The waters in Texas are finally receding, but now millions will have to pick up the pieces and recover what was lost in the storm. Many will be turning to the state and federal government for help. Others are questioning whether rebuilding in some areas is the right thing to do. Secretary of Energy Rick Perry is on the phone from Round Top, Texas. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for your time. I know that you toured the area recently. Can you describe the extent of the devastation as you saw it?
This is a different storm. My 14 years as governor, we saw a lot of different events: hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires, space shuttle falling out of the sky in East Texas, bizarre things like a causeway falling because of a errant barge that impacted it. But this one's different. This one's different because of its size, for one thing. I mean, from Corpus Christi to into Louisiana. So this is a massive amount of country that's affected, and the amount of rainfall. In Corpus Christi area, Rockport, Aransas Pass, and that you had more typical wind affected devastation there. I mean, it was more of a classic hurricane. Then you got in the Houston area, and it's flooding, and flooding of that we've never seen before. That, you know, potentially. Well, let's leave it at that. No one has ever seen flooding like this. The amount of it, 50 inches of rain. Right here and where I live, we had over 30 inches of rain.
Wow.
You know, we had minor damage. I mean, I thank God that we had no more damage than we had. You know, we had the roof of the house, the ceiling, the trees that fell over, but that's nothing compared to what the people in Houston, over in Beaumont. You made a comment that the waters are receding. That may not be the case in Far East Texas, the Neches River. It's going to peak out today, it's my understanding. So there are parts of the state where there's still search and rescue going on. And that's the most fascinating thing that I've seen out of all of this. This storm was bigger than the state of Texas. This storm was bigger than the federal government. But the citizens of this region and from all across the country come together, and the storm's not bigger than all of them collectively.
Sure, yeah.
The civilians who have come across the entire country. I had a story yesterday of a young man who came from California, stopped in San Antonio, bought 2 jet skis, went into western Harris County to help get his wife and family out. And then he stayed for the last 3 days.
Wow.
To do search and rescue, delivering medical supplies. I mean, it's just wonderful stories about Americans who have come to the help of their fellow citizens who are going through some incredibly traumatic times.
Well, that is very heartening.
Beautiful story.
That's so heartening to hear, Secretary. I want to get back to just your description of this tremendous hurricane. Like you said, you were there for 14 years and you'd never seen anything like it. And I have to ask, scientists do point to warming seas as making hurricanes more intense. So I have to ask you, as Secretary of Energy, do you think Harvey will make the White House consider doing more on climate change, on warming seas, like in the Gulf of Mexico?
Well, again, we can line up scientists on both sides of this. This is not the time to be having that conversation if you want to know the truth of the matter. I'm focused on search and rescue. I'm focused on making sure that the people of Houston and Southeast Texas and Louisiana, for that matter, are able to recover from this. There's plenty of time to have, you know, I know everybody wants to run to the climate change debate, but that is very secondary at this particular time. And let's get back to taking care of our citizens.
All right, let me ask you.
And then we can have this discussion.
Sure. Okay, let me ask you this sort of primary question. I think the president's budget would have cut hundreds of millions of dollars from disaster relief programs, including FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program. Is that likely to change now in the wake of this hurricane?
You know, I've done a lot of budgets before as the Agriculture Commissioner of the state of Texas, as the governor, and now as the Energy Secretary. And I've never seen a budget that starts like it was put into place, or excuse me, I should say, one that was finalized as it started out. So
sure.
that's the reason we have back and forth. That's the reason there is a Congress. That's the reason there's a executive branch, and we will have that discussion. That's how the process works. And I don't get all spun up that somebody's budget is perfect or exactly right.
Okay, I want to talk about the energy part of this and what you see your department's role is in addressing the needs of victims of Harvey. I know that you decided to tap the emergency oil reserves. How badly damaged is the energy infrastructure in Texas?
Well, the assessment's still going on, so we've obviously know there is a degree of, when you've got upwards of 20% of the refining capability that's been impacted, that's shut down at this particular point in time. How fast does it get back up? Are there pipelines that have some structural issues? Those assessments are being done as we speak. With that said, we have had events before. The oil and gas industry knows how to shut in and to bring back online in a thoughtful and, I might say, technically correct way. So I've got a lot of faith, having dealt with them before, that we'll get back. It may be a couple of weeks. There may be some supply shortages. You know, one of the things I caution people about is don't go joyriding right now. Be thoughtful about using your gasoline in your vehicles. And so, but with that said, we're going to have a period of time of bringing these refineries back on, making sure that the supplies are delivered in a thoughtful way going forward.
I know that this must be very personal for you as a native son of Texas. As we look toward rebuilding, and maybe you'll say this is a secondary question, but certainly tens of thousands of calls have already gone in about disaster relief. I wonder, when you look at Houston and that area, do you believe that rebuilding should happen across the board in Houston, or do you believe that flood maps need to be looked at and there's a potential that certain places shouldn't rebuild where they were, based on what you saw on your trip?
Well, I think it's a conversation worth having. Again, I'm gonna put that back. We search and rescue. We take care of people first, paperwork second. Take care of the people, get people secure. Then we go into a recovery phase, and then we can have, I think, appropriate conversations about, do you need to go back into this place that you have built? Are our flood maps modern? I mean, do we need to take a look at when these maps were done? Is there been a change in the weather patterns, and we need to have that conversation? I am completely open to having those discussions at the appropriate time. Yeah. Again, right now, the focus of the administration, the focus of this president is making sure that people are safe, that people's lives are not in jeopardy, and then helping them recover and get headed back to some semblance of normalcy in their lives.
Secretary of Energy Rick Perry, we certainly appreciate your time. Thank you.
Ty, thank you very much. So long.